You look at your LinkedIn profile and it reads like someone who couldn't commit to a single career path. Marketing, web development, photography, teaching. Maybe even a failed attempt at starting a coffee shop. And every time you update it, you feel that familiar nod of shame. Society has a diagnosis for you: unfocused, lacking direction, a perpetual beginner who refuses to grow up and pick a lane. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about building a successful career is based on a world that no longer exists? What if the very thing you've been apologizing for, your inability to stay in one box, is actually the exact skill set the future demands? Today we're talking about the M-shaped professional. And if you spend your entire life being told to specialize, this might be the most liberating 8 minutes of your career. For decades, career advice has been brutally simple. Pick something, get good at it, go deep, become the expert. This is the T-shaped model. Broad general knowledge across the top with one deep spike of expertise. And for a long time, this worked. The world was stable. Industries had clear rules. You could predict what skills would be valuable in 10 years. But that world is gone. The modern economy isn't a chessboard anymore. It's not predictable. It's not kind. Psychologists call today's environment a wicked learning environment. The rules change constantly. Feedback is delayed. What worked yesterday might be obsolete tomorrow. And the specialist, the person who went a mile deep in one narrow field, they're increasingly fragile. Think about it. If you spend 20 years becoming the world's best expert in a technology that gets replaced by AI, what happens to you? You're stuck. Your entire identity, your entire value proposition, gone. But if you're someone who also understands human behavior, design thinking, and storytelling, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're the person who can explain to executives what this new technology actually means for their business. That's the M-shaped professional. And it's not a new concept, it's just been hiding in plain sight. The M-shape has multiple pillars of deep expertise, connected by a bridge of curiosity and transferable insight. Imagine one leg of the M is data science. You went deep there, you're fluent, you can build models, interpret results, solve real problems. But your second leg is psychology. You also went deep there, you understand human motivation, cognitive biases, behavioral patterns. Suddenly, you're not just a data scientist. You're the rare person who can look at user behavior data and immediately see the psychological patterns driving it. You become the bridge between the engineering team that builds the product and the marketing team that sells it. That combination is rare, that combination is valuable. This is what researchers call far transfer. Specialists use near transfer. They apply what they know to problems that look similar. It's pattern matching within a single domain. But polymaths, M-shaped thinkers, they use far transfer. They take a framework from one completely unrelated field and apply it somewhere no one expected. A musician who understands rhythm and improvisation might look at project management and see parallels no one else notices. A former chef who transitions into UX design brings an intuitive understanding of sequencing, timing, and sensory experience that a traditional designer might miss. These aren't random career pivots, they're strategic architecture. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to build all the pillars of the M at the same time. They think, I'm going to learn coding and marketing and graphic design and public speaking all at once. And within 3 months, they're burnt out, overwhelmed, and back to feeling like a failure. You can't build an M-shaped career all at once. You have to think in seasons. This is called serial mastery. You pick one pillar and commit to it fully for a defined period, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years. You go deep enough that you're no longer a beginner. You reach what I call functional fluency. You can solve most common problems without needing constant guidance. You're not a world-class expert, but you're competent. Then, and this is critical, you make a conscious decision to move to the next pillar. This isn't quitting out of boredom or fear. This is strategic graduation. You're not abandoning what you built. You're completing that season of construction and deliberately choosing to build the next leg. Let me give you a real example. There's a 47-year-old software engineer who spent his 20s obsessed with music. He played in bands, studied music theory, learned production. Then, in his 30s, life demanded stability. He pivoted to programming, taught himself to code, got a solid job, but he didn't erase his music background. He just let it sit quietly while he built his second pillar. Now in his 40s, those two pillars have merged. He builds audio software. He consults for music tech companies. He understands both the technical architecture and the artistic workflow in ways a pure engineer never could. That's the M shape in action. Those pillars didn't need to connect immediately. They connected when the time was right. But here's the part no one talks about. Building an M-shaped career requires you to rethink what your day job is for. Most people treat their job as their identity. It has to be their passion, their purpose, their entire reason for existing. And that creates enormous pressure. M-shaped professionals often take a different approach. They choose a day job that provides stability without consuming all of their cognitive energy. It's what some call a good enough job. It pays the bills. It uses one of your pillars. But it doesn't demand 110% of your mental bandwidth. Einstein worked as a patent clerk while developing the theory of relativity. That boring, stable job gave him the mental space to explore the universe in his mind. If he'd taken a high-pressure academic position that demanded constant publishing and networking, he might never have had the room to think. This doesn't mean settling for misery. It means being strategic. A low-drain job leaves you with surplus energy. Energy you can invest in building your other pillars. Energy you can use to write, to learn, to experiment. That's not laziness, that's architecture. And here's the final piece that ties it all together. If your brain naturally generates more interest than it can hold, you need a system to capture them. Your mind is a high-output idea factory, but your working memory is limited. If you try to keep everything in your head, you'll drown in overwhelm. You need an external system. A place to capture your fleeting obsessions. When you get fascinated with medieval architecture for 2 weeks, take notes. When you dive into behavioral economics for a month, save your insights. Use a tool like Notion, Obsidian, or even a simple folder of text files. Because here's what happens. 3 years from now, when you're designing a website, you might stumble on those old architecture notes and realize the structure of a Gothic cathedral is exactly what this navigation system needs. That's the moment of magic, but it only happens if you captured the dots so you can connect them later. The sociologist Niklas Luhmann published over 70 books using this exact method. He didn't try to write entire books at once. He just wrote one idea on an index card, then linked it to another card. Over decades, these connections grew into a massive web of knowledge that practically wrote the books for him. That's what an M-shaped career looks like in practice. You're not scattered. You're building a personal knowledge architecture that no one else has. So let's bring this home. You're not unfocused. You're not a failure. You're not wasting your potential by refusing to specialize. You're building something the world desperately needs. The ability to translate between domains. The ability to see patterns across disciplines. The ability to be the bridge when everyone else is stuck in their silos. The economy is moving toward wicked complexity. The people who will thrive aren't the ones who know everything about one thing. They're the ones who know enough about several things to see the connections no one else notices. Pick your first pillar, commit to it for a season, build it until you're fluent, then strategically choose your next one. Protect your energy, capture your ideas, and stop apologizing for being exactly who you were built to be. You were never meant to be just one thing. You were meant to be the person who sees how everything connects. Drop a comment if this is hitting different. And if you want to explore more ideas like this, hit subscribe. Let's keep building.